Hello, my name is Matt. Welcome to Unbearable 73. Recently, the first episode of Moon Knight Season 1 dropped. So the question is, has the moon clearly risen into the sky, or should the show remain hidden in the dark of the new moon? Let's find out. Here's my comic background for those who are a little familiar, give you some perspective on my review here. I've not read a lot of Marvel or DC comics for the past 10 years or so. I stopped purchasing Marvel due to the One More Day, Brand New Day fiasco. I stopped purchasing DC when they went woke. I've largely read indies and older stuff. I never got around to reading a graphic novel or some manga. And I keep up with current storylines through like reviews and summaries and things like that. Back when I was a big Marvel fan, the biggest period would have been the 70s to the early 90s, and then there was a period from maybe like the late 90s through like 2000 and whatever Brand New Day came out, like 2004 or whatever. But back through that 70s period, Moon Knight was in the top 10 or so Marvel character I was really interested in. I didn't know at the time my struggles with mental illness, plus the tie into Egyptian mythology, made this character very appealing to me. So, who is Moon Knight? Now, note, this review in regards to the comic will contain a little more in-depth spoilers, but by the time you see this review, you should probably know the stuff about the show anyway. So, Moon Knight was created in 1975 by writer Doug Moench and artist Tom Perlin. His first appearance was in Werewolf by Night number 32. Moon Knight's civilian identity is Mark Spector, who was a U.S. Marine who worked in the civilian intelligence field before becoming a mercenary for hire. To avoid spoiling the show too much, I'll say that due to dire circumstances, Mark Spector becomes the Fist of Khonshu. Khonshu is a being in Marvel worshipped as the Egyptian god. Khonshu, as an Egyptian god. Early in the character's run, you never knew if Spector was batshit crazy or if Khonshu was real. Turns out both were true. Spector establishes several other secret identities. Later, I don't recall if it was originally intended this way or not, or for a retcon, but it was revealed that Spector suffered from dissociative identity disorder, or as the public probably refers to it or heard of it, as multiple personality disorder. And you've seen one of the personalities that Spector was a step-by secret identity, which turned to be a multiple personality of Stephen Grant. That was the first time you see him in the show as that character. Now, who is Khonshu? Khonshu is the Marvel version of the Egyptian god of the moon, Konoso. His name, Konoso, means traveler. He is titled like the Defender or the Pathfinder. Khonshu was one of the alternate names for Konoso in some of the other texts, basically a translation type of thing. So on the episode itself. Episode 1 is what I personally call episode 0, which I'll talk about later. It's the origin episode where you're led through the process of the reveal of the hero's identity and powers. It opens where we meet Stephen Grant, someone who's struggling through his day-to-day life, working as a specialist in Egyptian antiquities. I'll point out that the Stephen Grant persona originally in the comic years ago was kind of like a Bruce Wayne character. Through a series of mishaps and blackouts, Stephen winds up in possession of an artifact and encounters a cult leader named Arthur Harrow, who seems to have an association with the Egyptian deity Ammit. Ammit is kind of like a malevolent entity or demon. She devours the soul, the hearts. In her more benevolent aspects, if upon your afterlife, Anubis judges your heart if you're pure-hearted or not, and if you're not, your heart gets consumed by Ammit, and you sort of become like an undead wrath. In other versions, Ammit will kind of wants to consume all life. So I'll take it away, Vic. Now let's get to the episode itself. So the production quality. The production quality is very good. The effects are well done, but not overdone. They don't distract you from the plot. The sound and the music. In many respects, this was the best part of the episode. I loved the sound, the score, sound effects, and one of the best things in terms of keeping my attention in this episode. The characters. Oscar Isaacson is a very good actor. Regardless of what one thinks of the episode of the show, this guy doesn't mail it in. He goes for it and tries to portray the character. Ethan Hawke is also a good actor, and in this episode at least, he does a good job as Arthur Harrow, establishing him as, well, I was about to say, playing what amounts to a cult leader in a very nuanced role. Too much cult leaderiness, and you get a maniacal caricature. Too little, you don't find the character interesting at all. No other actors or characters mattered. Well, sort of. I'm not going to spoil that too much. The plot. I'll be blunt. The show suffers from what I call Episode 0 syndrome. Episode 0 syndrome only exists in the context of shows that have arcs that take place over multiple episodes. This is basically when the first episode includes the origin of the hero, as well as the kick, so to speak, the impetus of the kickoff for the plot for the whole season. If that's where an episode 0 scenario might be exist. 3 things happen in this episode that should have been the only focus of this episode: the establishment of Stephen Grant's character, the beginning of the season 1 plot, and the emergence of the Moon Knight hero identity. That's it. It should have been the whole focus of the episode. Right? Everything in the episode should have been subservient to those 3 things. Along with those, several other things are inserted that while long-term necessary, they take away from the time better spent developing the villain or the long-term plot. I'm not going to spoil it too much, but I will say it involves the establishment of the main character's mental illness and the establishment of the villain sort of scope of affairs. Those things, especially in terms of the hero, should have been told in flashbacks, or maybe do a whole episode flashback down the line with a tie into the current episode or whatever. But they could have cut 20 minutes out of this episode and still had more of the stuff that was relevant to the plot going forward. As I mentioned, the production value is very good. While I can nitpick and point out some flaws, none of them really detract from the experience of watching the episodes. In conclusion, and just talking about the episode, it's kind of a mixed bag. If you don't know what the character's primary gimmick in some respects is his mental illness, combined with the Fist of Khonshu part, then you're not going to get why Stephen Grant is acting the way he is. Also, the Stephen Grant persona in the show is different from the comics version of the Stephen Grant persona, as I mentioned. Comic fans will be expecting a sort of a Bruce Wayne character. And I'm not going to say this show should have changed it or whatever. I'm just saying, if you're a comic fan, and solely because Stephen Grant wasn't just like he is in the comics, you're missing the point, okay? This is multiple personalities. There could be 17 Stephen Grant personas in there. Technically, you're missing the point. Okay? So are there woke elements? Well, we'll have to wait and see if the show is just a set of a character like that in the background, or if these elements are going to become the predominant ones in the show, and we have the same bait and switch we get with a lot of comic book shows relatively recent years. I recommend watching the first episode to see how this progresses, but the show did not go through a great start. This episode is kind of like a 5 or 6 out of 10, with a couple of cool moments, mostly in Oscar Isaacson's acting, and there's kind of a good fight scene or two, not a great one, but good one. Now the final part, this discussion about mental illness, which has to be had in context of his character. Now, let me say up front, I'm not a clinical professional. I'm someone in what I usually refer to as remission from mental illness. Without going into detail, I've been treated by psychiatrists, psychologists, taking medication, been hospitalized, and so on since I was a little kid. My symptoms in the past have been suicidal ideation, PTSD, anxiety attacks, panic attacks, antisocial behaviors, mood swings. I got treatment, and for most of the last 20 years, I've been in a relatively good place for my mental illness. If you're suffering any of those symptoms, call the suicide hotline. You don't have to call for suicide. They can help you find a local. They help me find a local mental health professional to, get help with. Or you can call NAMI, N-A-M-I, just Google them. They're the National Line for Mental Illness. They can help you get either group therapy or single therapy with local professionals who can actually help you. Or get spiritual counsel. Whatever you have to do, I'm not a counselor. I can't tell you what to do. I mean, I'll probably do some videos about how I deal with things, but that's how I deal with it. And one of the ways I deal with it, and why I'm talking about this, is I'm always fascinated by movies, books, TV shows, other media have characters who have mental illness and how they deal with it. To name one, in a manga, obviously Naruto. The lead character, Naruto, and Sasuke, the 2 co-leads, both have significant mental health issues that Kishimoto is a master at depicting certain things on, especially in the manga. The anime kind of overblows it and hits you with so many flashbacks you get annoyed by it. But just reading through the manga and how Kishimoto explored those issues, that's a manga example. Or if you want to see the best depiction of a character in his own way, living with mental illness I've ever seen depicted in a TV show, and I have a link to it below. There's a show called Life back in 2007 where Damian Lewis was a star, played Charlie Cruz, and was also starring the lovely Sarah Shahi, as well as Adam Arkin. To this day, I still rewatch the first season. It was a 2-season show. Every so often, because as Damian Lewis plays Charlie Cruz, living life where he's clearly mentally ill, but dealing with it and functioning. So before I even knew that I was mentally ill as a child, even though I was experiencing symptoms and was troubled, I was drawn to some extent to Moon Knight, though I wasn't sure why, as I said. Now, regardless of production values, for the adaptation of Moon Knight to be a good one, here's the point I'm making here, the show will have to treat with respect and proper creativity and execution the issues of mental illness that the main character suffers from. I'm not saying to whitewash things. I'm not saying to go woke and make him a victim, whatever. Because in my recovery from mental illness, what I was taught, I'm not a victim. I'm not a survivor either. I'm a human being living with a medical condition, and that's how it had to. In my view, that's how this should be depicted. That's how Moon Knight was depicted in most circumstances better. You know, there's my alert to cut the video off if you hear that. You know. But anyway, I'll continue to monitor this as the season unfolds. As I said before, I'd recommend giving them 3 episodes to see, if this unfolds and continues to be a proper Moon Knight show or not. There's enough in the first episode to make me want to see more of it. And I'll probably do the first season at the very least, because it's about 8 or 10 episodes. It's not going to kill me. Yeah. Thanks for listening. If you want to hear more from me, subscribe. Like this video if you liked it. Dislike if you disliked. My name is Matt. It's been on Rebel 73. Have a nice day, and I am out of here.